Hey you all, Farmer Jesse here. Got another great video for you this week from Jackson Roulette, my partner at no-tillgrowers.com, also the host of the excellent Collaborative Farming Podcast. You should check that out. And earlier this year, he went out west and we sent him to several different really awesome farms to get some footage for you. So this week he is visiting with Zach Brooks, owner of Arizona Worm Farm. Really amazing operation. Zach gives us a glimpse into not only what he does, but also just kind of some ideas about starting a commercial composting venture in general. Very cool stuff. One note, this video was paid for in part by a grant from Southern SARE. Also, our amazing Patreon members at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers. If you like this video or any of our videos, that is the lifeblood of our work. Consider signing up. We appreciate it. Other than that, commercial composting. Let's do it.
My name is Zach Brooks, and this is the Arizona Worm Farm. This is a 10-acre self-sustaining farm at the base of South Mountain on the south side of Phoenix. We raise worms and chickens. We make compost and fruits and vegetables. Our goal is to turn sunshine, rainwater, and other people's garbage into food and shelter for ourselves. We process about 320 cubic yards of waste every week and grow between 50 and 60,000 worms a week here at the farm. Our primary business, of course, is growing worms. We do our best to produce approximately 5 million worms, to breed and raise about 5 million worms a year. We produce verma castings, so worm poop, and we produce about between 6 and 7 cubic yards of vermicompost a week. We produce about 160 cubic yards of compost a week. The 4 key products here at the worm farm: worms, worm compost, castings, and a raised bed mix that we produce for the local market. We have 10 acres here at the worm farm. There's about 2 acres of it that are devoted to just houses and barns and industrial stuff, and about 8 acres that are the combination of composting, gardens, fruits and vegetables, and our worm operations. Okay, so this is our composting wedges as they're initially set. 3 general components to our compost. We use ground landscape waste, which provides carbon. We use aged horse manure, which is a nitrogen source. And we use pre-consumer fruit and vegetable waste. We layer in generally a layer of mulch and then a layer of horse manure. We follow that with a layer of fruit and vegetable waste. And we repeat that process until we get a pile that's a little over 6 feet tall. The pile is going to shrink by about 50 or so percent during the composting process. And so we start it with as tall a pile as we can get. We find the taller pile helps us keep the inside more moist. Here in Arizona, keeping our compost wet is really a significant problem. So what will happen here is after we get these layers laid out, we'll come in and give this a deep soaking, and we'll add a ton of water to it to let it all get quite wet. It takes about 2 or 3 days for that nitrogen to go to work, and it'll heat up. These piles start at ambient temperature, which today is in the 60s. They'll heat up over 140 degrees within 2 or 3 days, and that's just the microbes consuming the bacteria and multiplying. We'll run a John Deere, a large turner over these windrows, and that will move everything from the bottom to the top. It also exposes those microbes to additional air. That cools the pile down, typically to around 120 degrees. We'll wet it again. It'll heat up again. We try and get 3 full heat cycles above 137 degrees to kill any pathogens and weed seeds. And then after that, we just let it cure. And we'll measure the temperature, the smell, and the percentage of moisture every single day to keep it in line with what our expectations are. And we can make adjustments to things like water or turning it to make sure that it's curing and generally starting to to cool. It's about 3 weeks during the heating cycles and the turning, and then between 4 and 6 months for the curing process. What we're aiming for as an input is a carbon-nitrogen ratio of 30:1. And so we tweak our inputs to produce that initial CN ratio so that after it cures, we get a CN ratio closer to between 12 and 18:1. That provides a lot of available nitrogen for the growth of plants, plus the carbon that plants need for their structure to support themselves. We're looking for horse manure from stables that don't feed their horses things that have persistent herbicides in them, because that's a significant problem. If you're careful about the stables that you get, that's important to get as clean manure as we can get. We get food waste from a salad producer, the people that make those bagged lettuces and bagged fruits for grocery stores. What doesn't go in those bags, we get here at the farm. And the reason that that's important is we don't have to worry. It's pre-consumer, it's before people have touched it. We get fewer contaminants and we get fewer pathogens through that process. So by using an organic producer that's very careful about separating that waste, we get a good quality fruit and vegetable waste. The ground landscape waste, unfortunately, is our greatest source of plastic. City of Phoenix has a waste diversion program. In order to keep ground landscape waste out of the landfills, they give landscapers a discount to bring it in, and it's supposed to be free of plastic and free of any contaminants. The quality of that varies, and sometimes we find ourselves out here pulling plastic out of the wedges because it's just a sort of inevitable byproduct of the society that we live in. So that's our primary inputs. We've been making compost out here for about 4 years. We've tweaked the recipe significantly. We tweaked it significantly in the first 6 to 9 months to get it to heat properly and cool properly. Over that, we've just continued to refine it. So we're checking temperature, moisture. We're looking for a CN ratio. We're looking for bacteria and fungi, and we do that fairly routinely. We come out here and we put it on a slide and we go back and look at it, and we're looking for bacteria and fungi. Bacteria are super easy to grow in Arizona. Fungi are a little bit harder. And so we're continuing. Again, it's about the input, the recipe that goes in, the amount of time that you have to let it cure, and the level of moisture helps impact the long-term growth of, particularly of fungal hyphae. Our target is 6 months. This is a brand new pile. It was just set. It'll be watered heavily in the next day or two. It'll be turned once it heats up, and then we'll track it. It'll start to, the temperatures will go up, we'll get those 3 heat cycles, and then it'll start to decline. And somewhere between 6 and 9 months from now, it'll be ready for sale. So we won't sell it until it is at least as cool as the ambient temperature. So here you can see the steam coming off of this thing. It's 60, 70 degrees outside right now, and this is probably 130 plus. So this is 2 weeks in. It's just got a nice composting smell to it. That it won't have a manure smell anymore, and it won't have a anaerobic smell to it. So we're checking, in addition to checking the temperatures, which we do with a thermometer, we're checking the moisture level, which we just do by a squeeze test. So we want it to hold together nicely. When we squeeze it hard, we don't want water to come out. So we check that water level, and then we smell it. And then we'll take some of it, bring it up to the lab and take a look at it to make sure that the right bacteria and fungi are growing in it. And again, when you reach in here, you're going to see that it's nice and cool, that it smells like a forest floor. Still has that moisture level because the moisture is necessary to grow the bacteria and the fungi, but the heat's all gone. So this will get run through our screen, and we'll take out all these big chunks because you don't want too much carbon in your compost when you actually produce it. And what'll be left will be a pretty nice, good product that's available at an affordable price. So We have competitors that produce a better quality of compost, but that compost runs between $600 and $1,200 a yard. Our compost at $60 a yard. It's the high end of commercially available, but it's an affordable compost. So we make some trade-offs between extreme quality and affordability. So when the compost is fully finished and it's cooled nicely, we'll take it from the wedge and run it through this screen. This screen is considered a small screen. There's really 3 different levels of screens. There's a farm size screen, there's this size, which is kind of a mid-size screen, and then there's big ones. This was the only one that we could afford. It runs through this screen and gets piled here, and then it goes from here either into our gardens or to feed our worms, or it's sold to customers. We both deliver and they come and pick up here in their cars. We also use the compost as an input to a raised bed mix that we produce here on the farm. We run it through a 3/4 inch screen, which means all of the pieces are at least are smaller than 3/4 of an inch to get through there. And that gives us a nice, again, carbon nitrogen mix for our customers. We have what Cat calls a small loader. It's a 2-yard bucket, just a front loader. Front loader is used to move the material from the wedges into the screen. And then we have a mid-size and a skid steer that we use to load into customers' cars. We have a John Deere tractor and a Sittler Turner. At some point I'll show you the original equipment that we used because we started on a much smaller scale. The loaders and the tractors have gotten extremely expensive, and so in order to pay for that equipment, we've had to go to this scale. So again, that's just a key point in this. If you're an on-farm composter, you can, with 3 pieces of equipment, with a tractor, a turner, and a loader, you can produce an acceptable compost for your farm and for your neighbors. If you want to sell it, you need to add a screen, and so you need those 4 pieces of equipment, and you can do that for as little, again, buying used equipment, assuming you can keep it fixed and repaired, you can do that for as little as $30,000 or $40,000. When you get into these larger machines, it's easy to spend $150,000 or $200,000 on each component of that. So you can do it small scale inexpensively. Getting big, you need big machines that are quite expensive. Right, so this is the original, this is actually my favorite piece of equipment I've ever bought. It's a John Deere 1980s version of a 4040. Super simple machine. You turn the key and it starts up. It's got a half a dozen gears. We bought this used. We also bought a Sittler compost turner. It's a small one. It stands at about 4.5, 5 feet tall, and we made small rows. The tractor was $6,000 and the turner was $6,000, and so for $12,000 we had the core components of what we needed to get in the composting business. We bought a used Cat skid steer, and those were the first 3 pieces of equipment that we bought, and we started making compost. And then as we started getting profitable in making the compost, we bought bigger machines and got bigger piles and were able to do more. The beauty of this is there's not much to go wrong on it. There's not a computer, there's no DEF, there's no air conditioning. It just runs. So in the 5 years that I've owned this machine, the only thing we've ever had to replace is the starter, and we were able to do that ourselves. I really like. I'm a fan of this machine. It just wasn't powerful enough to do the big turning that we want. And now we can wander over, and I'll show you what that big one looks like. So I think this is either 7 or 8 feet tall. So that lets me make an initial wedge that's 7 feet tall. I know that during the composting process it's going to shrink, and so I end up with a 4-foot wedge. But to put more compost on our footprint, I needed to go to a bigger turner. And so this was the bigger turner. When I got the bigger turner, I had to get a tractor powerful enough to pull it, and that's how we ended up with this new John Deere. This is a 6155R, and it's a 125 or 150 horsepower machine. This is actually the only piece of equipment on the farm that I don't know how to drive, because it's just hugely complicated. It does a lot of stuff by itself, but it's been completely reliable, and it's strong enough to pull the big turner that we needed. We're limited by space to the amount of compost that we can grow here on the farm. We can produce approximately 120 cubic yards per week on the space that we have, and we just don't have space to get any bigger. In order to, and we have a customer demand that's 2 or 3 times that. In order to expand the amount of material that we can sell with our limited amount of compost, we've added a raised bed mix. And that bed mix includes about 20% perlite, about 25% cocoa coir, and then about 5% worm castings, which we produce here on the farm. So by putting that into a mix, we're able to about double the amount of product that we sell. So on an average week during our busy seasons, we'll sell between 60 and 100 yards of raised bed mix, and then 40 to 60 yards of compost, sometimes a little bit more. The mixing operation is actually pretty straightforward. We measure with half-yard buckets into a 2-yard mixer. So we're taking, 2 scoops of compost, 1 scoop of cocoa coir, slightly less than a scoop of perlite, and then half a scoop of worm castings. We add basalt dust for mineralization, and then that gets piled into our raised bed mix, where again it's either bagged. Customers come in and we load them in bulk into the back of pickup trucks and trailers, and we have our own dump trucks where we'll deliver it in larger amounts. So the compost we sell for $60 a yard. The raised bed mix is $135 a yard. Part of that is that the inputs to that have gotten quite expensive. And you can see we're having to buy perlite and cocoa coir. The supply chains have gotten really kind of awkward. And so we're having to buy large amounts to make sure that we have what we need at the time that we need. So cocoa coir comes to us from Pakistan in shipping containers. Used to cost us about $8,500 for a shipping container full of cocoa coir, and about $8,500 to get it here, so $16,000, $17,000 for that combination. Today, the cocoa coir itself is still $8,500 or $9,000, but shipping is $25,000 or $30,000. So what used to cost us $17,000 is now costing us $40,000. And we have to bring it over. We used to be able to order and get a container delivered within 8 to 10 weeks. It's now taking 6 to 8 months. And those checks get written, a lot of it up front. And so we're having to buy a year in advance to make sure that we have cocoa coir when we need it. It's become more complicated. The composting business itself, those inputs obviously are all local. And so the first thing we tried to do was to produce a really good compost, and we were able to do that. Because the demand for that compost got to be so great, we started looking at how we could increase the value of that compost, and we did that by adding additives, which allows us to stretch the amount of product that we have, and charging a premium for that process. But there's a lot of costs involved in that mix. We buy these cocoa coirs in bricks, but when you expand it, we're probably paying as much as $70 a yard as an input to that process. So it's an expensive product. There are upfront capital costs to be able to make that product and have it available to our customers. Thank you for visiting the Arizona Worm Farm. You're welcome here anytime. We're open Monday through Friday and Saturday mornings. We have self-guided tours and VIP tours, and we'd love to show you around. So anytime you're in the area, we'll show you the Arizona Worm Farm. Oh, sorry, let's do that one more time. I think I hit a button.